But yeah, ultimately though, I gotta be honest with you about something, man.
What's that?
I'm not sure if there's a point to this story, but I'm gonna tell it again. And you know what else?
What else?
So many other people tried to tell the tale. Not one of them knows the end.
Well, hopefully, I'll try to comprehend you the same way you try to comprehend me.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on this side of the Mississippi. I don't know why, I channeled, Nicolas Cage robot voice there, but, it is what it is. I'm just gonna roll with it. This podcast is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one, the only, the undisputed Ryan James Kearns.
I think the reason you were channeling Nicolas Cage there is because we were approaching Halloween, and I don't know, it seems to fit. And I am the one, the only, the often disputed Matthew James Durzik.
That always, throws me a little bit off, to be honest with you. The often disputed, there's a false Matt Durzik out there just posing as, somebody who has, excellent musical takes, and his facts are opinions, so, hold on, his opinions are facts, there we go. Anyways, so this podcast is called Hey, Listen to This, and if this is your very first time tuning into an episode of this podcast, first of all, on behalf of me and Matt here, welcome. Second of all, what we do here is that essentially every week, me and Matt use this as an opportunity to explore different albums. And it could be for various different reasons. It could be like, hey, this is a popular album this year. We've covered from the spectrum of Brat, Taylor Swift, and Pearl Jam, all from this year alone, to various results. If you guys want to know what our thoughts are on those albums, check out our back catalog. It's there for your enjoyment. And, also there's times where we bring albums to the table that we personally enjoyed in the past, and they are quintessential, albums for us in our history. So, for me, I brought Black Country New Road to the table, and, Matt's brought Neil Young to the table, so it's been a really enjoyable project that we have going on. And so last week, what did we cover last week, Matt?
Last week we covered the one and only Metallica with their 1991 eponymous release. Most people know it as the Black Album. It's probably their most famous album that they've ever released. Classics on it like Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters. Sorry, Ryan, to say this, but also The Unforgiven. And we both enjoyed the album for the most part. I enjoyed it a little bit more than you did. And this week it is your turn, and what have you selected for us to talk about today?
So, I wanted to dive into a artist that has been a very much cornerstone of my musical taste, my musical appreciation. I don't want to say how I base my personality, but it seems like everything that he has touched and he has dabbled in, I've really been a huge fan of. Heck, whenever he announced a double album a couple years ago, I'm instantly pre-ordering both of those albums on vinyl and not regretting it. So, for those of you who are Ryan, please cut to the chase. So the artists that that I'm going to be highlighting over the next couple episodes that I'm going to be choosing specifically is going to be one, Mr. Jack White. And the first project that we're going to be talking about of his is the Raconteurs. And for those of you who are whoa, what's a Jack White and what's a Raconteur? Well, first of all, I don't know how to explain it, what a Jack White is. I mean, he exploded onto the scene thanks to, his main act. I would argue that his solo act nowadays is starting to like take over the legacy of the White Stripes, but that the White Stripes was his main launching point into the mainstream. It was a duo featuring him and drummer Meg White. They were part of that garage rock revival scene. And they also intersected with me developing my musical taste into like what it is today. Whenever we do cover the White Stripes in a future episode, I'll go dive a little bit further into that. And when it came to Jack's other collaborative efforts, we like the Raconteurs came into my orbit with songs like Steady as She Goes. And while we could cover that album as a whole, Broken Boys Soldiers, that's the album that I was just referencing there, we are going to be talking about Consolers of the Lonely. And that's the second studio album from them. Let me just... I do believe it was released in 2008. I apologize for not properly prepping. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm also just feeling time.
I think it's 2007.
You think it's 2007?
Yeah.
You're usually pretty good at this here. No, it's actually 2008. Ha! There we go. Circle gets a square. Yeah. So, yeah, Consolers of the Lonely. This album I have a huge relationship with. As we go further into the review, I will obviously share my opinions about it, but nuts and bolts of it, when the Raconteurs came out and I checked out Broken Boy Soldier, I was just like, oh, hey, this is kind of cool. This is kind of a little bit off the beaten path of the White Stripes, but you can obviously tell that the Jack White influence was still there. The blues rock, garage rock stuff was still there. So it was almost like a cousin of the White Stripes, if I can, draw a proper comparison. So other than that, I mean, saving my opinion about this album that we're talking about this week for the context of this review, but yeah, I enjoyed Broken Boy Soldier and the other album that they released after Consolers of the Lonely. It's okay. I haven't really gone back to it, so this album here holds a very significant space in terms of how I view the band and Jack White as a whole.
It is an interesting look into sort of this side hustle that Jack White has, because like you said, with the White Stripes, he sort of was part of that garage rock type of revival. This album, as we'll get into, goes in a relatively different direction for the majority of it. And yeah, I think you said quite a bit about where we're going to be heading, so let's head there and let's kick things off, shall we?
So, yeah, before we officially kick off, I got a little blurb here on how the Raconteurs came to be.
Go for it.
So, essentially, the way that Jack White and Brendan Benson got together is that in the middle of a hot summer, they were in an attic in... I do believe it was in Nashville, and they wrote a song that truly inspired them. That song is probably the most famous Raconteur song, to this day, and that song is Steady as She Goes. So, yeah, that's basically it. They were just jamming, and they're like, hey, let's form a band. This song is actually kind of cool. So, yeah, not too much more other than that. I love, little blurbs like that. Yeah, so... That being said, I will go ahead and kick her off with the opening track. It is actually pretty much the title track on the album with Consoler of the Lonely. And yeah, dude, I love this track, man. I can't think of a more perfect way that I ever heard a rock album open up. This is so amazingly, like, it sets the table so amazingly well. Like, you think about it, like, you get that intro with that, like, you hear that talking in the background, and it seems like the guitar player is just, riffing and jamming, and, like, just faint line, like, just random strums here or there that are very pronounced, but you can still hear that crowd noise in the background. And then it just kicks into a full full on jam session. That groove that is established is so it is essentially hypnotic. And you think about even like the lyrics for this song here specifically, which is not going to be really the case for a lot of like the tracks on the album, where like the lyrics are more of a mood setter and like they really aren't the main focal point. But like here, like you think about like how this album opens up lyrically, you get lyrics like "Haven't seen the sun in weeks, my skin is getting pale, haven't got a mind left to speak, and I'm skinny as a rail." Like, you can really get behind the mindset of just like, oh, hey, this person is going through a hard time. And like, you can, like, I remember the first time I heard this song and I was just like, dude, I can relate, like, not that I've ever been really like, skinny as a rail, or like, light bulbs have really never gotten dim for me. But, yeah, I felt the struggle that was going on in that, and the way that Jack delivers that, it's just so good, man. Like this song just slaps so freaking hard. And then even just to throw a monkey wrench into it, like we don't stay in that groove, and we don't stay in that like like a depressive sad boy kind of lyrics about like hey, life is like is a bit of a struggle. You get like that change up in the chorus where everything just slows down, and Jack does that little like sassy whispery kind of thing that I'm gonna discuss, like like illustrate like that vocal tone as. It's probably not a proper way to talk about like that little like sass that he does, but I'm absolutely here for it all day. And just the way that the band is just tearing into the verses is so tight and so good. I just love this song so much. I mean, it's like on the surface, it is a simple rock song, but the lyrics tell the story that many people can relate to, and just the way that it is structured, it is so good. And we've already arrived at one of my favorite songs off this album here, and this song lands at number 2 out of like a top 3. And also, full disclosure, for those of you who are wondering, like, do I have a bottom 3? Do I have a bottom 2? Do I have a bottom song? I don't in this this album here. It's like I as we dig on further into this album here, I'll explain why. But like I have a top 3 and I don't have a bottom anything.
Well, that is some rather strong foreshadowing there, Mr. Kearns. Full disclosure on my end, I have a top 3, and for the first time in a while, I also do have a bottom 3. We'll get to those as we go along. This song didn't land in either, but I'm pretty much right there with you as far as this song being really, really, really good. Not just setting the table, which it really does. You talk about the groove on the verses. The band that immediately came to mind when hearing that was Bad Company. Like, this is just like a strong, solid 70s-ish rock groove on the verses. And then, like you said, when it gets to the chorus and it just changes things a different tempo, and Jack White does this sort of patented Jack White vocal, sort of like a... I know you said like whispery, shouty. It almost comes across like a Dr. Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show in a sense. Just a very sassy, like in your face, coy, but I know everything and more than you do type of vocal. It's what Jack White does best. The lyrics, like you said, are really good too. Again, not only does this song does a great job of setting the tone from a sonic level of which two sort of side they're coming from, which is sort of the 70s side mixed with Jack's usual garage rocky side. But lyrically, it touches on a theme that's going to come up time and time again throughout this album, which is just this sort of exhaustive plaintive introspection on this man or whoever's singing and what they're going through. So it's not my top three, but it came damn close. I would say probably if I had to do a top five, this is probably landed in there.
I could totally respect that, and yeah, I can't get over Jack's that vocal delivery. It is so good, and it comes up in a couple different spots in this album here. One song specifically with that, obviously we're going to talk about, but I will point out that vocal delivery. Yeah, so ready to salute your solution.
Time to salute your solution. This is the second track on the album, and this is more of a typical garage rock Jack White type of vibe, with the key difference being that that bottom or that bass that's sort of driving at the beginning of the song and throughout the song is, again, very 70s and very good. And it just drives so well. Like if you're listening to this in your car, don't be surprised if the cops pull you over. This is just a really good driving type of song. And it is interesting, too, because for the first time on this album, we hear a vocalist that isn't Jack White. So, it's kind of interesting to hear that and sort of the interplay they have going on between them vocally. The lyrics are okay. I didn't really... Again, I think like you said with Console the Lonely, sometimes they're more to set the mood and sort of drive the song as it is. And the vocal delivery, not just tonally, but physically is fantastic. I didn't really pick up on it until the second time I listened to it, but the way they're just getting out every syllable as quick as they can so fluidly and so smoothly was very impressive. Overall, it's a great groovy song. Once again, did not land in my top three or my bottom three. But once again, another it goes much like Console the Lonely in the good song bucket. And there's plenty of songs on this album that fall in there as well.
So I'm right there with you when it comes to how Jack is delivering those lyrics. Whenever you talk about physically, in my notes here, it almost seems like he is rapping those lyrics, especially in the verses. It is just so amazingly good. And it's funny, when it comes to Salute Your Solution, I really didn't care for it in terms of as much to the degree as I do now. After this album's grown on me over the years, and I hate to be that basic white guy in America, but this song here was used in a Call of Duty trailer. And I think it was thanks to that use in that trailer that I was just like, hold on, let me revisit this song. And let me revisit it in the context of, driving. And then let me revisit this in the context of driving and getting pulled over by the police. No, just kidding. But no, this song slaps so freaking hard, dude. The way you didn't really compare the two, but in my head, well, I guess you kind of did. Sorry, my brain's a little bit short-circuiting because I just, when it comes to talking about Jack White, I get a little bit passionate. I don't know if you can tell or not.
No, I can tell.
But no, it does definitely follow the same, it pulls from the same veins of inspiration as the previous track, Console the Lonely. Opening the gate, you get excellent guitar riffs, and such a nasty groove that like you said, is driven by that bass so efficiently. And the chorus is solid. I love the chorus. When the track switches gears, comparatively to Console the Lonely, and you get a much more slow groove, and where the the guitars and the vocals match up in rhythm. I just love that so much. The guitar solo is also very, very fucking good. yeah, just the way that everything comes together in this track is just so good, and I just love the groove of it. And like, I don't know, like I was thinking about like what attracts me to like various types of music, and like sometimes it's something just sounds good and feels good, and if it can really move you in that aspect, like I'm all here for that, and this is definitely one of those songs. In terms of lyrics, this track here just seems like it's somebody trying to overcome obstacles, and you get lyrics like, "I seem to think I got a little situation, so listen to me, sister. Listen, maybe you can help. I think I got a lot of problems by consideration, but not for me. They always seem to be for someone else." But yeah, dude, like lyrics aren't really the main driver, but like it's nice to get like a little bit of a contextual, like overview of what Jack was trying to go for here, Jack and Brendan. But yeah, dude, this song is just so freaking good, and we've also arrived at another favorite track of mine on the album. This is number 3 on the album. And spoiler alert, the next track isn't going to be my favorite track, so we're not going to go 2, 3, and 1. So I'm going to start to cool down a little bit in terms of like just how hot and heavy I came into this review of like Guns a Blazing. But I mean, it's very comparative to like how Jack and the group has like started off the album, man.
It is, and again, I think between this and Console of the Lonely, from a sonic standpoint, it does a great job of providing sort of the establishing sounds that we're going to be hearing a lot throughout the album, or at least the very establishing sort of avenues will go. Like, there are some moments that we'll get to where it just you may get caught a little off guard thinking, oh, well, they're trying this now, but the fact that it's basically Jack White and not Jack White type songs that are on this album, and we will get to each of them in due time. But again, I really did like Salute Your Solution as well, but much like Console of the Lonely, not in my top 3.
I'm very curious to see what what is going to be in your top 3, but we will get to that. But in the meantime, I feel like I should pivot over to the next track, which is You Don't Understand Me.
Let's do it.
So yeah, very much like how I alluded to in my like when we were talking about the previous track in Salute Your Solution. You Don't Understand Me is a bit of a cool down, and I like when bands do this because you show a different side to yourself, and you can show that, hey, yes, you can write a rip-roaring track, and then you can write like a track that's basically like a piano-led track. I wouldn't say it's a ballad or anything like that. It's more just the piano's introduced here in an organic way, and like in terms of like within the song and my feelings about it, I like the song a lot. Like I said, it did not land in my top 3, but in terms of just overall thoughts and opinions, background vocals are solid here. Decent to solid chorus. The groove that Jack is working with in this track is just so tight and so in sync that I'm all here for it. And this is another track that got into my orbit of like love and appreciation whenever you and I saw Mr. White perform this live over at the Peterson Event Center. So and in terms of lyrics here, it just seems like this is a almost like an anti-love song, or just a frustration song about like what your significant other is doing. You get like lyrics like, what do you think you are doing? Who is the fool, or the fool you are fooling? Also, like that play with like the fool, or the fool you are fooling. I love that. And also lyrics of like, finishing off that set are "And Maybe I Just Don't See the Reason," and it's not like as like biting or anything like that. I think it's just general like exhaustion, how you alluded to when talking about like "Consoler of the Lonely." But yeah, overall, this is a very tight song. The jam session near the end is super tight, and also a little moment that I did appreciate is like that those little piano licks that occur at the ends of phrase to guide the listener back into the rest of the track. It's almost just like a passageway. So overall, like great to amazing song in terms of my overall thoughts and feelings about "You Don't Understand Me." I did appreciate the cooldown ultimately, because I don't know what I would have done if I went through like 14 songs of like what we just experienced with the opening two tracks.
14 songs, they're all my favorite.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. But all seriousness, though, I'm right there with you. I think the song is amazing. And like you said, like you were sort of reintroduced to this song at that concert back in 2022. I was introduced to it because I had not heard it before, and I remember just loving it then because again, it was that nice little cool down from the usual like sonic blast, especially in a place as loud as the Peterson Event Center. And honestly, this is one of those songs that if and when I do revisit this album in the future, like this is going to be one of those songs I come back to because, again, the melody is so pretty. It's a very simple but driving tune. The piano is dominant throughout, especially the piano solo at the end, where it gets to that point where Jack is, or whoever's playing the piano, is just like going to Triplet City and just going da 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 da, like just wailing on it. And even then, it just sort of creates a sort of a honky tonk, almost sort of saloon style atmosphere throughout the whole track. And we've arrived at my second favorite track on this album. And the only reason it didn't quite get to number one is two reasons. One, I think it does sound better live, and yes, confession time, I do have the album from the show we went to on CD. I got it from Nugs, and feel free to borrow it anytime you like. And secondly, again, the lyrics are good, but they're not great, and they're certainly not as great as the song that's at number one, which we will get to.
I hope we have the same favorite song. And also, I hope to God that my favorite song is not in your bottom three, because if that's the case, I'm just gonna cry. I'm just gonna be so sad.
If I'm thinking it is what it is, I think we might have a shot.
Okay, well, we will see. But oh my goodness, I'm sweating here a little bit. But yeah, you kind of hit you definitely hit the nail on the head when it came to like You Don't Understand Me. Great overall groove. Lyrics really don't drive home the point, but it's nice where Jack can construct a song. Jack and company can construct a song that relies more on performance and groove and feel, and you don't really have to dive head first into the lyrics. I mean, they're there if you really want to try to make sense of the track, but it's more about just what the sonic elements bring to the table as composed to the written elements. But yeah, pivoting over to Old Enough.
Old Enough. Now, this is another song that tends to go in a different direction. I think we've had 4 different songs so far and 4 different sort of timbers as far as the sound. We had, heavy garage rock, we had 70s rock, we had saloonish piano ballad. Now we have more of a country rock vibe going on, like an indie country rock vibe with this song. And it is a really, really good song. Because Jack and, I know his first name is Brendan. What's his last name?
Benson.
Brandon Benson, yeah. The way those two lock In Together, like vocally is fantastic on this song. And it's just a really, really nice sort of up tempo, uh, country rock ish song. Lyrically, it's kind of about, telling some girl, maybe the girl that is the antagonist throughout this whole album, that, hey, once you get old enough to understand life, you'll understand where I'm coming from. I really like this song a lot. It did not land in my top three or my bottom three, but it's definitely in the good song bucket because on the plus side, it's definitely a really nice, pleasant song. The organ and the violin that are throughout the song are fantastic, and they are key staples of sort of that, proper ambiance of country rock. I don't know if it's 70s country rock, but we're going to go with it. And yeah, I just really enjoy this song too, for just how it sounds. But ultimately, I did find myself on the second listen through it going sort of in one ear and out the other. Not negatively, but just not really standoutish to me. So, good song.
I'm on the same plane as you, because I'm much more accustomed to what Jack White and company can bring to the table on various occasions. Like, this song got elevated on the enjoyability scale, but I totally understand the sentiment of hey, this song does bring something interesting to the table. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's a whatever kind of burger, but it doesn't do enough to really stand out. But the performances within it, the way that it's structured, and just what it's attempting to do, it's solid enough on its own. It really knows what it does. It knows what it's trying to do, and it does it pretty greatly. But just things that I appreciated about it is just the different thick layers that you get in this song here. You get thick layers of strings, droning guitars, and just that those elements, they work so well within the context of the song, and the way that the band, just the way that they work within the ends of phrases, it's so tight in how it's all coming together. I really don't have much to say about this song here specifically. I like what it brings to the table. I don't really have that much negative things to say about it, but also I don't really have that much positive things say about it as well. It just seems like, hey, they try to do a low key country infused track, and they nailed it, but they didn't nail it what they did with Salute Your Solution and Consoler of the Lonely, and even with You Don't Understand Me. This song stands well enough on its own.
I agree, and I think we pretty much nailed down what we needed to about if you're sort of the country rock, sort of the Big Thief vibes that it gives. This song is for you. But within the context of the album, it's fine. So I think we're ready to move on to the Switch and the Spur.
So we my overall feelings about the Switch and the Spur, you take about what Old Enough was doing within its own context. I kind of have the same feelings about the Switch and the Spur, but to an elevated sense, as weird as that sentence has come out in my brain there. It seems like it's doing a couple of different things, trying to make itself stand out and incorporate a couple different elements. Right out of the gate, with the intro, the way that the piano and the guitar are working within the context there, and then they get mirrored with the horns that are included in that intro. It works so well, and just also just the way that the verses are structured sonically, it almost seems like it's almost like a desert blues theme. And then that opening theme that you heard with the horns, the piano, and guitars, it comes back and it almost acts as like its own individual chorus, which I do appreciate. And then the transition from the salsa groove that you get in the verses into that horn-led chorus isn't exactly smooth to be real with you. It just seems like it's a little clunky. Um, and the other note I have here is just the way that the lyrics are being delivered at the end are so tight. It almost seems like Jack is issuing a warning, and those lyrics are for theirs is the power, and this is the kingdom, as sure as the sun does burn. So enter this path, but heed these four words: you shall never return. And the way that that groove just carries the song out, it's solid. So I again, like, I feel like I'm still gonna put this on the same playing field as like Old Enough, but for a different reason, because like, you know, I did make the comment about like that salsa kind of groove, and then like switching over to that horn led chorus. It doesn't seem like that's a smooth transition, but also like there's other elements within this song that kind of could push it over the edge of like, you know, Old Enough. But yeah, it's just it it's an interesting song. I ultimately walked away with it pretty. Like, I did enjoy it, but it had its moments where I was just like, you know, a little bit topsy turvy with it.
I kind of in the same boat as you on this one. Again, not in my top three or bottom three, but I did really dig how it started with sort of that old Western type of mariachi trumpet thing, like you said, sort of a desert blues. And again, the way that the two sides of the song sort of, you know, go in and out of each other is a little on the clunky side, but not so clunky where I was just like, oh, I don't like that. I was more or less like interesting. All right. And the way that the lyrics come across too, because like you said, it sort of starts with this sort of perspective of, you know, here's this guy, you know, going through town and trying to figure out, you know, his life. And then, like you say, that warning that Jack repeats at the end of the song. And ironically enough, I know you don't have a bottom three, but the song that it reminded me of, honestly, was your least favorite song from last week, which was The Unforgiven. Because the perspectives, again, it sounds like on the verses, or at least the old Western part of the song, Jack White's talking about somebody, and then during that outro, he is that somebody. And I was just kind of like, so we're doing this again. All right, cool. But ultimately, for whatever cynical thoughts I have towards the song, it sounds fine. I dig the fact that they sort of went for this sort of old Western style song. Sort of fits in sonically a little bit with You Don't Understand Me in a sense. And Old Enough to a degree as well. So yeah, nice sort of continuation of this sort of old Western theme, which, by the way, for those of you who've never seen the cover to this album, the cover art definitely depicts the band in sort of this old Western type of, you know, wagon and pony show. So kind of another theme that this album is sort of trying to consistently deliver on. Sometimes.
I'm still kind of stuck on the fact that you compared this song to the Unforgiven. I mean, I get the lyrical, like, you know, comparisons and, like, you know, the kind of Western kind of themes. I just think, like, for those of you who want to, like, you know, hear my full thoughts and feelings about that track, I have opinions to say the least. But, like, you know, in the context of this track here, because I want to, like, you know, steer the conversation back to this review, it just seems like the track doesn't drag, and, like, you know, yes, that little transition I ding the track for, but it really, the groove is well established, and it just doesn't seem like, you know, they ride out that groove forever and ever. But nonetheless, you know, I don't want to, you know, remember the Unforgiven. I just want to leave it like, you know, Unforgiven in the corner. So, but yeah, I mean, overall, I feel like we are pretty set on the Switch and the Spur. I feel like right here with these two tracks back to back, we kind of hit. I don't want to say a lull in the album, but we're definitely getting into like the deeper cuts on the album. So I think I'm ready to pivot over to Hold Up. Are you?
I am ready to pivot over to Hold Up, and it's funny that you talk about the reference to this being the deep cuts on the album, because this track is not very deep whatsoever. I will say that the band and the guitar in particular on this track does sound very good. It's a very nice driving groove. And that is where my compliments of the song end, because we have reached my second least favorite track on the album. And before I get into why, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to Two Songs Down, which is Many Shades of Black. I'm not going to talk about that song, but the way I listened to this album was I was looking up the lyrics on Genius while listening to the song, and I noticed this blurb in Many Shades of Black that this was actually covered by Adele on her debut album as a bonus track. And so I looked up that note, and I looked up a follow-up article in which Jack White, how do I say this civilly, revealed that he's not a huge fan of Adele, and also was never a huge fan of the Black Keys. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Jack White has sort of established this sort of notoriety, this infamy as a gatekeeper of mainstream rock and roll throughout the better part of the last 2 decades. And here's the thing. He could do that. Free speech being what it is, he has the right to say that. But I have the right to say that if you are going to gatekeep and call out artists like Adele and the Black Keys, you need to come up with songs that, are at least better than this, which sounds like a slightly better version of Jet. Remember Jet? Because this song sounds like a Jet song. It's just, the sort of refrain of hold up, hold up, hold up, and just sort of the hand claps, and the lyrics are banal as all hell. Again, sounds nice. Sounds like a great driving track. But again, compared to especially what he's established himself on, sort of the elevated thought process of trying to create a song on the previous tracks that we've talked about so far, and I will throw Salute Your Solution in there, even though that's sort of sonically in the same ballpark as this one. This one is just, it is a nothing burger of all nothing burgers. And again, the fact that it's so banal lands it at my second least favorite track on this album.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at my favorite. No, just kidding.
I was about to say, we're going to have a problem.
Which, I mean, interestingly enough, so when I was trying to decide a top 3 for this review here, this song here actually landed within it landed in the pool of songs that I chose as contenders for a top 3. Obviously, I kind of joked that this was my favorite song on the album. It is not. And we've already talked about 2 out of the 3. So ladies and gentlemen, this is not one of my favorite songs on the album, by proxy. But I kind of like it. I mean, I feel and I don't really have much else to say, because I really can't go into the lyrical, depth of it, because, it's just vibes on this track here. I'm not even going to bother to justify and try to, shoehorn some random thing last second by pulling up the lyrics on genius.com, and I'm literally not doing that right now. But I appreciate what the song had to bring to the table. It's just plainly in your face, and I love it. Maybe this is one of those songs that I ended up turning off my brain to and was just there for the vibes. I'm pretty sure people who enjoy Fast and the Furious movies, they might have the same kind of process and like being like, oh hey, I'm just gonna turn off my brain and just enjoy like cars in space and like that kind of jazz. But going back into Hold Up here, like moments that you get in the chorus where you get the shouts of Hold Up, I really did appreciate, and just the overall groove that is laid down here. It is just so freaking good in terms of like even within the intro, you get the shouts of Hold Up, and that's only topped by the ripping guitars that get that kick everything off. Yeah, dude, like the guitar solo is just really really good, and like this song just slaps so well in my humble opinion. I don't really have much else to hold against the song here, and maybe it's because again I'm a Jack White fanboy and I'm a stand for anything that he does touch. Or maybe it's just because, like, I never got affected by, and I never really understood all the hate that the band Jet has ever received. It could be for a couple different reasons.
Well, okay. I mean, so I'm a fan of Jet too. Like again, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I listened to that album, and it's Get Born is actually a pretty solid album, despite what Pitchfork says. But to your point about this being a turn off your brain song, I wholeheartedly agree. And if you're willing to do that, this is a great song in that regard. Like you put this on the car stereo, it's a great song. The problem is, and I've talked about this before, juxtaposition matters in an album. And you talk about this being a turn off your brain song. The problem is the previous three songs, at least, if not all five, have sort of forced the hand of the average Jack White listener or those who expect something from Jack White to sort of turn on their brain to be like, oh wait, they're trying something new here. They're trying something different, like country rock on Old Enough or old Western vibes on The Switch and the Spur. And not that they can't have sort of a piss around feel good track. I'm all for that, but again, I like you said, those shouts of Hold Up that you said are just good vibes. I did not get those vibes at all, so that's just going to come down to our opinions being different. And yeah, I think you make some great points, and I don't disagree with a lot of them. But again, what worked for you did not quite work for me here. So I've said my piece on this song.
Okay, fair enough, man. And it's funny. I'll add this one little stinger at the end of this discussion, and then we can move over to Top Yourself. It's funny that you mentioned hey, Jack White fans are expecting almost like a like something not this where you turn off your brain or anything like that. Like when. When Jack released his latest solo album, No Name, and I remember watching the Anthony Fantano review for that album, and he made the comment that a lot of White's fans were looking for just a simple garage rocky kind of album, and they got it within that album. So it's funny that you mentioned that it's an interesting discussion and what our Jack White fans are looking for, and I would consider myself to be a huge Jack White fan. I mean, hell, the things that he's touched, I've in terms of in my record collection, he's the most well represented artist within my collection. One day I'll actually count how many records I own of his. But yeah. Yeah, just little stinger at the end there. We can pivot on over to Top Yourself. And I think it is my turn to top myself. Am I correct?
It is. It is.
Okay. So, so yeah, it's funny that you mentioned in the previous track, the contracts and the juxtas of the. Oh, hold on. Wow. Words there. I've had a day. Take two. It's funny that you mentioned, like, just the contrast between, like, you go from Old Enough to Switch in the Spur, then you get into Hold Up, and now you go into Top Yourself, which is almost seems like we're going back down into, like, the groove that was established within Old Enough and the Switch and the Spur. But just the way that this track begins, like, you get that those acoustic-y guitar vibes and how Jack's vocals fit just so well within it. Like, it just begins with him just strumming and just, asking, hey, how you going to top yourself? And it just, the way that just grooves for a little bit and it just builds and builds and then just kind of goes into, like, full-on jam session, I really did appreciate it. And, like, here, I caught some interesting, interesting lyrics, and it, like, you talk about, like, in songs like Old Enough and, like, even, like, maybe even, like, You Don't Understand Me, where it almost seems like Jack is talking to an ex-lover. This year, it seems like he is talking to an ex-lover, but in a very more, like, tongue-in-cheek and very, like, vicious kind of way. The lyrics that I'm pulling to, exemplify this are, how you gonna do it alone when I don't pick up my phone? I'd love to give a dog a bone, but I'm not gonna stick around to help you. Um, like, and also you get lyrics, the way that these set of lyrics land, is how you gonna get that deep when your daddy ain't around here to do it to you? And, like, the instrumentation drops off after that last little phrase. Like, it's really good, man. And overall, like, this also could have cracked into my top 3. It's not my favorite song off the album, but it's an excellent song in its own right. And yeah, I would consider it, like, one. Well, obviously, with my feelings about it, it's, like, on an elevated plane, and I think it's one of the bigger songs on the album, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong.
I'm pretty much right there with you. I definitely think that the country rock vibes are a nice relief from Hold Up, in a sense. And lyrically, I very much compared it to the title track, which kicked off this album, Consoler of the Lonely. Because I feel like, again, this is about an ex-lover and Jack basically trying to be as frank as possible to this, significant other. And you're right, the lyrics here are very much more frank and graphic than they have been throughout the whole album. When he's talking about giving the dog a bone, or, daddy ain't ringing your bell, or saying you need Jesus or you need a sugar daddy. It's just like, okay, who hurt you and why? It is very much in your face lyrically, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in a sense. And like you said, that openings with the sort of acoustic sort of shuffle, I was kind of reminded a little bit of Nick Drake, maybe some Exile Main Street level Rolling Stones, with sort of that low down, sort of rustic type of sound. I like the song quite a bit too. It didn't land in my top 3 or my bottom 3 either, but I'd say it's in the middle towards the upper half of this album.
I could totally respect that, and I missed the opportunity to execute a often used trope in our little show here. And ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at the Raconteurs Idiot Wind with Top Yourself. So you're welcome.
That's totally fair. That's a very apropos connection between those two songs.
All right, so before we pivot over to the second half of the LP here, I'm just going to go ahead and plug some stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have been enjoying what Matt and I have been doing here today with this podcast, and, like, in general as a whole, the best way that you can show me and Matt some love is by, on that podcasting platform that you are currently listening to us on. You know what you need to do. You need to give us a positive rating. And also, you need to make sure that you do that action that's going to allow you to stay up to date with us in terms of, like, subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do. And also, if you are one of those many people out there who are listening to us on the YouTubes, make sure that you do yourself a favor and do me and Matt a favor, and more importantly, do yourself a favor, and hit that like button and throw a comment on this review here and let us know what you think about Consolers of the Lonely and the Raconteurs. Am I salivating too hard over it, or is Matt right when it comes to Hold Up being just a just not a good song. But yeah, and if you guys are interested, we have the social media links in the episode description if you want to stay up to date even further. But yeah, now that I got that out of the way, I feel like it's time to talk about. I mean, it's very appropriate that we're doing this album review at night because, the next song is "Many Shades of Black."
It is, and we're getting to that time of year where many shades of black are draping the sky even earlier. We are heading towards fall, and the sky's getting darker at night. But this song, man. It starts off with that mariachi trumpet again, much like it did with the switch and the spur. And then it goes into this sort of frenzied shuffle throughout the rest of the song, which does allow for this sort of frenzied ideology that the lyrics provide. The lyrics aren't super descriptive as they were with Top Yourself, but they get the point across. And here we have what I consider to be the best singing on the album so far. The way that Jack and Brendan are singing on this song is phenomenal. They're hitting the high notes, they're in sync with each other, and the passion that you could hear in the two of them singing this song, you could feel it throughout. The band sounds good too. The guitar solo is fantastic. So yeah, this definitely, much like Top Yourself, sort of got back into the vibes of Old Enough. This got into the vibes once again of the switch and the spur, but to a considerable elevated level. So much so that we have reached my third favorite song on this album.
I can totally get behind that, and this also landed in contention of cracking into my top three. It's amazing that I feel like I'm going to say that about at least half of the tracks on this album here. But even talking about a couple of things that you hit on, that I'll start with that guitar solo. I was really blown away about how well it was constructed. I mean, the way that I viewed Many Shades of Black, I kind of saw it as this big band bluesy kind of swing kind of deal. It was just a fusion of that, and I was really taken back by that style. You in the chorus, you kind of get that. You really get the marriage of those two styles coming together. But then, in the verses, I can almost see this song here being performed at, it would be weird if it was performed at, a prom night or, a homecoming dance. But, it almost, I get the picture in my brain. It's almost like an anti-love song in that sense. But going back to that guitar solo, though, I love how well it works within the context of that big band blues feel that I described, because you get White's, I almost want to say, signature glitchy guitar style, and it works out so freaking well. I love that solo, man. And even backing up a little bit, outside of the context of that solo, the chorus is just so... It's one of the best choruses in the whole album. And, just... Overall, though, it's just... I'm loving how the song begins. You get the groove is established right out of the gate. And just how the song just flows. It just flows so good. I mean, and also lyrically, there's I walked away from this here, you get passionate moments if the vocals are delivered, but the lyrical context, it almost seems like the the narrator here is like, apathetic at this point in a relationship. You get lyrics like, see if I cry, see if I shed a single sorry tear. I can't say it's been that great. No, in fact, it's been a wasted worry year. So, like, at this point, the narrator's just done, and like the way that this title came about in terms of like many shades of black. Apparently, like it's an allusion to like the many different horrible ways that this relationship can end, and yeah, overall though, like I did see the same note that you saw on Genius.com about him not liking working with Adele, and I thought that was an interesting choice there. If there's anything that I don't like about Mr. White is his he kind of can be a prick at times, and like I don't appreciate that. I mean, like going off on a side tangent, like I as much hype and like press that his latest concert in Pittsburgh got, I don't like the fact that it was announced within 2 days, and oh hey, it's at a small venue, and oh hey, it's $125 for per ticket. When like you and I saw him for like if I'm not mistaken, I think it was like $50 less per ticket. Yes, it was in a bigger venue, and I know what he was trying to go for, but like, dude, like if you're gonna do that, maybe plan it for like months in advance. But I don't know. Maybe Jack White is just trying to do like this thing where he just surprises everybody with something. Maybe like next week he's gonna announce that the White Stripes are getting back together. Who knows?
That'd be a hell of an announcement to make. But going back to your analogy about this being played at a prom, I don't think it'll be played in the typical sense at prom. I think this would be played in a movie in which the prom scene features the bad guy or the ex-lover getting revenge on the new couple. That's the kind of vibes I'm getting based on what you're saying. Because I could definitely see like people dancing to a normal song at prom and then just like a bunch of like dudes in like long overcoats just busting through the doors and being like, yeah, no, we're taking this over. And this would be the song for that, because there are certain many ways of doom and how this night could end. So here we go. But yeah, overall, despite his misgivings about allowing Adele to cover this song and then working with her after the fact, I like the song. And yeah, there's a reason it's at number 3 on my list. It is a wonderfully performed song.
So shifting over into 5 on 5. So for those of you who are dedicated fans of Matt and I here, first of all, hey, welcome. I don't blame you. Me and Matt, we deliver really good content on a weekly basis. But in all seriousness here, so the way that I had Matt pick between the two Jack White projects within the context of the specific albums within those projects that I chose, this was like I had him pick between the numbers 3 and 5. Well, this is I took the inspiration from this track here. So, just a little side note for those of you who are mega fans out there. But 5 on 5, dude, like we shift again into like a rip roaring like garage rock side of the album. And I just love how like the track rips right out of the gate with those like squealing guitars, and also within this track here you get Jack delivering that signature vocal delivery that we talked about in, I think it was Consoler the Lonely, or like one of the earlier tracks in the album, and I just love it just so much. And like just the way that the guitars work within the context of this track here, like you get like I just have, oh my goodness, I have to take a breath because like this song here is just so freaking good. Like even talking about within the context of the chorus here, like, you get those ohs. They are so good. The guitar line, like I was trying to articulate earlier, but I just got so worked up about this track here. The way that it works and it rips through this track here. It almost acts as a grounding point for the track, and I really did appreciate that. And also, like, me, I like it when a song kind of shifts into different kind of gears. And like the way that I felt about this song, it almost seems like this song was like, it feels like you're driving in a car, and like, it just stops and starts and shifts gears at various points. Like, it's almost like an abrupt kind of shift, and like, I could see how like some people might not be here for it, but I'm here for it 10 times out of 10. And like, again, for a lot of the tracks in this album here, lyrics are here for more for vibes than anything. But yeah, and also weird enough, like in terms of just overall feel, outside of like, the vocal delivery, this song kind of reminded me a hair of Charmer from the Kings of Leon review that we did. But overall, like, this song, again, like many songs on this album, could have cracked into my top three, but for various reasons, I mean, like, I got a lot more hot and heavy about, like, the other two songs, and whenever we get to my favorite song, you guys will, like, just know why, like, I picked that song over, like, the 5 on 5 here.
It is immaculate on your part that you mentioned that this song reminded you of Charmer.
Yeah.
What did I think about that song?
It was hot garbage.
Yeah, and not surprisingly, I think the very same thing about this song. It is my least favorite song on the album. It is fascinating that for the last 6 songs, we get that order of, country rock, old western, garage rock. Country rock, old western, garage rock. And the come down from Many Shades of Black to this is even harder, because I will say a lot of the things that you took away that you liked, I didn't. That screeching intro, the first and second time I listened, I was like, what on earth is this? It just sounded like sort of like a garbled mess. And the lyrics, I mean, the opening lines are pretty good because they do sort of fit the theme of what we were going about, feeling lonely and feeling like there's got to be some sort of solution to it. But the lyrics about, her laughing in stereo, and I have no idea what 5 on the 5 actually means. And I don't know, this track, and the other thing I don't know if you mentioned the outro or not, but the outro just cements sort of the haphazard nature of the song. Now, again, much like Hold Up, if you turn your brain off and you sort of don't think about this critically, it's fine. It comes across as just sort of a, crank it up, party hard, go punch drywall type of song. I get that. But once again, the problem is that you preceded it with 2 tracks that force your hand or force your ear to think more, sonically. Again, Many Shades of Black is a great song. It's a great song that sort of bucks the trend of, the typical mainstream rock sound of the late aughts. That to go to this and to, again, in my opinion, go to banal lyrics like, laughing in stereo and the ohs. Again, it's such a come down for me. So, sorry, Ryan. It's my least favorite.
I can respect it. I mean, we never really fight on the our show here. Like, we've had moments where like one person's favorite track on a project is the other person's legitimately least favorite track. And for those of you who are looking for an example, we did a episode on Gang of Youth, so go check out that review. But it's just interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's more of within my wheelhouse, and I understand how like some stuff doesn't land on your ears, and I respect it. So I really have nothing else to say about this song as a whole. So are you ready to pivot over to Attention?
Yes, it is time to talk about Attention. And I think the song does a great job of getting back to basics. I mean, granted, the last song was as basic could get, but for the context of this album and its sort of pivot from the Jack Whiteosphere, the JWU or whatever the, phrase would be, the Jack White universe. This song, again, sort of echoes back to the sort of 70s-ish rock groove of the title track. I love the way that the organ and sort of the fuzzy bass groove, it works so well in the song. It does a driving thing throughout the whole track that really stood out to me. The lyrics, much like you've said many a times, I'll say it here, more for vibes than anything else, but at least I kind of understand what they are compared to Five on the Five. They get the point across. They don't have to be, this sort of wild tale of, bank robbers and murders. Spoiler alert. But yeah, it's just, this did not land in my top three or bottom three, but it definitely goes into the good song bucket for being just a great, solid, driving, groovy song.
It's interesting that you use the term like driving groovy. So the way that this song here came into my orbit within drawing attention to it in terms of outside of oh hey, this is a song within this album here, is that oftentimes when I used to run over in North Park in the Pittsburgh area, my music streaming service of choice would default to putting this song here specifically within my earbuds, and over time I just grew to appreciate how well this song was a great running song. It's a perfect running song. It's not Run the Jewels on that level of running, but the way that this track grooves, like you've alluded to, it works so well. But yeah, the way that you talked about the instrumentation in the verses, executing that more of a bouncy riff, locks in so good, and just the way that the bass just works within the context of this track here. It just works so well. I love how it's just such a running bass feel. And just the performances, overall, this track here specifically, I was really taken away by the performances because everything's just so tight, so organized, and so on in the pocket that I just really did appreciate. And another aspect about this track here that I did like is that I love in the bridge, how everything kind of dies down instrumentally, and then just it builds everything back up so freaking tight. And yeah, overall though, I really can't really see say anything else that you already touched upon within this track here. Not one of the tracks that could have cracked into my top three, because it's still kind of more on it was just missing that little element to take it over the edge. But again, really solid track. I do appreciate the history that I have with it. And for those of you who don't know what this track is, because again, this is, I would say this is definitely a deep cut in the album, considering we're in the trenches, and we're on in the trenches in the back half of this LP here. A lot of people might not be aware of it, but it's definitely worth your time.
Yeah, no, it is worth your time. It's more, again, it's, to me, this accomplishes what Hold Up and Five on the Five couldn't quite do, which is, be a fast, fun driving song without being for, again, my personal tastes, annoying. So I like the song.
All right. So we are moving on to, well, we're in we're in the home stretch here, man. We have four more tracks to talk about. So the next track, it is the shortest track on the album, and that is "Pull This Blanket Off." And I was really taken back by this track in terms of just like what the group was bringing here to the table. Like, because instead of like a big old like production, like with the flow, like the sequencing, how it's landed, where you get the old western track, the bluesy kind of influence track, and the garage rocky kind of track. Like here, it just seems like this track here was kind of just built together of like, hey, this is a live recording and the band's just grooving together. Like, I was really impressed by like how well it came together. It's a very simple track. I initially started to think that this was a piano ballad, but no, like you get the other instrumentation coming in, so it's not quite a piano ballad, to be honest with you. But I just love how it's just a loose jam session, just grounded in the blues. And this is probably Jack being right within his wheelhouse, like taking inspiration from like his influences and just trying to make it his own kind of spin on it. But yeah, and like another random note I have about this track here is just it's interesting at the very end of it, and it carries over into Rich Kid Blues. You get Jack saying, "All right, good night." That's also a very great touch. But overall, though, I really did dig this track a great deal. And if it wasn't for just if it was a little bit longer, it could have cracked into my top three. But still, a solid track nonetheless.
I'm almost exactly right there with you. I like this track a lot too. And it is a shame that it is so slight, because it does not only feature some great piano playing and sort of a real sort of somber, if loose type of vibe from Jack, but honestly, also some of the better lyrics on the entire album. Again, he's sort of reaching into that introspective idea of, wondering if the situation he's in is the right one. Like he's singing very passionately and very earnestly, but again, it's so very quick. And the only other real knock I have on this track, aside from the fact that it's so short, is, again, maybe it was because I was listening to it through YouTube, and if it had been, flowing with attention, it might have made more sense. But the intro, that like the first few seconds where it's just like kind of all over the place before Jack starts singing, you're just kind of like, what the hell is that? But aside from that, really good track. Solid track again. This would be one of those tracks which I think it'd be kind of cool, because I know like Jack does like piano ballads during a show, sort of cool things down, like You Don't Understand Me or What's Done Is Done. I would like to see him pull this one out a little bit more, just to sort of give the audience a breather, sort of let him show his piano skills. Yeah, I really like the song a lot. Did not crack my top three, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I'm right there with. Well, obviously I'm right there with you, but yeah, not really much else to say, to be honest with you, dude. Yeah, you ready to talk about some Rich Kid Blues?
Let's talk about some Rich Kid Blues, and once again, I'll start with the positives. The music on this track is great. Like, the vibes on it, like, even though the music itself is a little sort of haphazard, a song that reminded me of, in sort of its haphazard nature, is a song by Led Zeppelin called Over the Hills and Far Away. Because it sort of pivots between sort of this folky-ish, like, backdrop, and then sort of bumps up into this sort of stomp groove. And like on this track, like the band sounds great. The drums sound really good. The organ sounds fantastic. Jack White himself sounds pretty good. The harmonies are nice. All of that to say, this is my third least favorite track on the album. And it comes down to two things. One, the lyrics, and 2, what they do or do not mean. Because this track to me has the same issues that the Switch and the Spur had, and also, like we talked about last week, the Unforgiven had, which is that, it's sort of a mishmash of 2 songs put together as one. And I think this track is the worst offender of the 3 in that regard, because it opens up with this sort of weird, like, miasma of, life is tough and I'm not sure what to do. I got a rich kid's blues. And then the verses go into this mode of, talking about relationship, which to me frustrated me because, you're naming the song Rich Kid's Blues, and you say you have a rich kid's blues, but then none of the rest of the song explains what a rich kid's blues even is. And I'm not saying you have to, again, go full Gordon Lightfoot or Joni Mitchell or Leonard Cohen and be like, this, poet among poets talking about, the light in the air, touched my skin. Like, you don't have to do that. But you gotta be somewhat consistent with the lyrical nature. And it to me, this just didn't work at all in that regard. But again, sonically and musically, I like the song quite a bit. And if it wasn't for the sinking lyrics, I might have given it a pass. But unfortunately, it's the 3rd worst track on the album for me.
So it's interesting that you pointed out the lyrics of being like, kind of like all over the place, because I actually discovered that this is a cover of a song written by English and rock vocalist and guitarist Terry Reid. So, okay, more you know. Still doesn't change, like, because if you decide to cover a song, you include it in your album, it better be a good song, because if not, then you got
Jags like me talking about it
to cover it. Yeah. But yeah, I really did enjoy, like, as compared to, like, a lot of the tracks that you were not digging. I was like, I really did enjoy what this track had to bring to the table. I would say it's not one of the tracks that could have cracked into my top 3, and I think it was just for the basic reason of just a principle that I have, that, and it might be a weird principle, where if I discover a song as a cover, it's not getting a perfect rating for me, because, like, you didn't organically come up with this song. If you cover it well, I'll give you some props, but it's not a purely original song. I'll pass. But yeah, I think overall, though, like, when it comes to, like, how I approach this song here, is I did appreciate the shifts in gears. Like, you get the opening, like, acoustic-y, bluesy section that you were alluding to, that shifts over to more of a thunderous big rock feel that has, like, Jack just tearing into, like, some awesome lines there. And then, like, you get the song that changes. The song changes up again with, you get that section where it just seems like the bottom kind of falls out of the instrumentation. And ultimately, like, if I had to be honest with you, like, within the context of the song there, that moment kind of just seems like a little random, kind of weird, in terms of just like, oh, hey, and look what we can do now. We're going to take the bottom out of the instrumentation, even though we established that, like, we're going from, like, this acoustic-y kind of song to more of a thunder rock, big rock kind of feel. And, like, luckily this song doesn't stay within that bottom fell out kind of instrumentation. It goes back into, like, more of that that groovy instrumentation that is almost like home base for this song. And one thing I did note here is that Jack's vocals within this track at certain points are just so fucking passionate. Like, I was actually blown away by it. And yeah, I mean, solid jam session to end everything off, and lyrics again are more for vibes than anything. And with it being a cover song, yeah, you can only do so much within the context of the lyrics. But yeah, if I had to be honest with you, not my favorite song on the album. And even with me talking about it and vocalizing my thoughts, I mean, I realized that, oh hey, actually no, there's holes in the song. Let me take it down like, at least one peg.
It is fascinating that this is a cover, but at the same time, it's not super surprising that it is a cover of a song from the late 60s, early 70s. I have heard the name Terry Reid before. I am not super familiar with his work, but the fact that it sounds like a song that would have been written by some sort of like, mid-level hippie songwriter in the 70s does bode well with this song because, again, Rich Kids Blues definitely sounds like a sort of, hey man, we're fighting against the establishment and I have the money to do so. It's like, time out. No, you don't. You want to try to, push yourself out to, the peace and love audience, but at the same time, you're recording for Columbia. Let's be realistic here. All joking aside, though, again, if I was just listening to this track without thinking about it, I'd love it. But unfortunately, we talk about, the things we notice and the things we see and the things we like and the things we don't like. And again, I will say what elevated this above the other two is, again, just the way that organ comes across and the way it sounds. So like, it almost sounds like they're trying too hard to be 70s. Like there were times on this album, like Console for the Lonely or Old Enough, where it seemed effortless. This time you can hear the effort. Like, no, we're sounding 70s. This is 70s Jack White. And it's just like, it sounds nice. Just wish the lyrics would have been better. So you can at least blame Terry Reid for that one.
Yeah. And to even give you some backing here in terms of not liking the three specific songs that you didn't like. I mean, hell, this is what this project is for. It's just something, even going off maybe on a little bit of a tangent here, but I feel like I want to maybe tie it into our discussion here and what we do as a whole. Is I was listening to just a little blurb that Bo Burnham, of all people, illustrated, and well, not illustrated, but talked about when he was talking about Twitter and how reductive it is. And it's literally reductive. You can only do 160 characters. I mean, that's what a lot of conversation is nowadays. Of you think about one of the most popular social media networks out there nowadays is TikTok, and everyone's trying to do their own kind of TikTok ripoff, where it's just it's only a 30-second clip discussion. But if we really want to change the way that things actually work in the world, we gotta have long form discussions instead of just shouting at each other, and within the context of what we do here. Yes, there are certain tracks and certain moments that can we put on a Drake song and purely vibe out to his 29 song LP, Certified Lover Boy, or Views, or a couple of the other later albums in his discography. Yeah, sure thing. We can totally vibe. But when we listen in and we do our intended purpose of what we're trying to bring to the table here, yeah, we kind of realize that some of the stuff actually kind of sucks. So there's no right way to listen to music, but within the context of what we're bringing to the table here, we're trying to bring more of an elevated plane where we try to point out different aspects, and we each bring something different to the table, and I absolutely love it, man.
I do too, and I do too. So all that being said, are you ready to head to the penultimate track on the album with These Stones Will Shout?
Yes, and side note, I'm glad that we don't have to fight in this this review here, because there was one track here that if you said it was in your bottom, we would have fought. You've already revealed your bottom, and it doesn't contain the track that's coming up. But yeah, I'm just glad. Side note. So the penultimate track, These Stones Will Shout. So Yeah. Interesting track here, man. Like you get the again, Jack and company showing that they can build a song pretty effectively. Like this song here, like a lot of the tracks in this LP begins with just a simple acoustic groove that you get Jax singing with it, and I do appreciate the chorus here and the overall context of what the lyrical message of this song here is trying to bring to the table. It works well within the context of like what the sonics and how the band develops the sound throughout the song. And lyrically, the song is about the narrator trying to instill confidence into another person. You get lyrics like, "You're not secure enough to tell me your first impression of all these clowns, so you'll be tricky enough to compel me to take the lead and to speak out loud." And it's almost just like, you get like that opening where it's just like, kind of like speaking softly and everything like that, and then things kick into a different gear, and like you can feel like that person kind of got that confidence, and that's really elevated to a new level whenever you get that chorus in that elevated rock instrumentation. It lands really freaking well, and overall, other than the slow burn and like the songwriting aspect where you get the two different styles, I mean, it's a good enough song on its own. It's just missing that one thing to kind of take it over the edge, but I do appreciate what this song brings to the table within the context of the album.
I do too, and I think I'm a little higher on it than you are. It's not my number one song. Spoiler alert, I think we got the same one. But man, this song came real close to the top 3 territory. Because again, that I thought the acoustic guitar stuff at the start of this song is fantastic. I would almost put it on par with what we were talking about last week with Nothing Else Matters. Just very pleasant and very in sync with one another. I think the switch over to rock was a lot more, effortless than it was on the switch of the Spur, or even on Rich Kids Blues. I thought it was, it just flowed so perfectly. And the singing, I think the harmonies on this song are one of the standout things too. The way that Jack and Brendan are, again, harmonizing with each other and elevating this track to a higher plane in and of itself. I love how that's become our phrase of the night, apparently, just elevated plane. But still, that being said, it was missing that little something to take it over the top. But again, this is in the top half of the album for me. It's just a really, really nice song.
I absolutely agree, and I really can't say much else about it, and I'm slightly salivating at the the next song here. But yeah, overall, it is a really great song, and I feel like this song here was one of the songs within the album's context, and just it's interesting that I brought different moments in time where I've been drawn back to this album, and whether it's through my streaming service saying hey, you need to run to attention, or Call of Duty being you need to salute your solution, or a couple of different reasons. There's been many different things that brought me back to this album. Thanks to us revisiting this album, I'm definitely gonna really dig These Stones Will Shout. It's a really great song, man.
It is, but I know you're salivating, so it is time to pivot to the final track on this album, which, for those of you who are keeping score and playing the home game, you may have noticed that neither me or Ryan have revealed our top song, which can only mean that this song is it. The song is called Carolina Drama, and I will go first on this. One of the reasons, because I had a tough time deciding between this song and You Don't Understand Me as my top song. Because honestly, I think if I were to just take the live version of You Don't Understand Me against Carolina Drama, I might take You Don't Understand Me. But on this album, it's really not even a contest. Carolina Drama, it is the best song on this album. For starters, it has the best lyrics on this album, and it's not even remotely close. Because this is that song I've been talking about, not having to, go into story mode territory, but here Jack White does it, and he does it like effortlessly. And like it tells a great tale about sort of jilted lovers and a jilted family, and who's blaming who for who did what, and who's got the gun, who's got the money, who's got the booze. And the way he interweaves it all and sings it out is, again, very, very well executed. Almost very similar in a sense to Salute Your Solution as far as the technical aspect of his singing. The only slight knock I even have on the song is that I think that the space between the verses could be a little bit more interesting, but at the same time, we've talked about this before on our Cure episode, Disintegration, that if you give a song room to breathe, it adds a little bit of, no pun intended, drama to, the story aspect of the song, Bob Dylan did it really well with Simple Twist of Fate, and pretty much any song off of Blood on the Tracks. And this song, again, the space is just, it does help. It's not super interesting, but it does help in creating this ambiance of, oh, what is he going to say next? Where is the story heading? It is just well executed on every level, and it's weird because it feels like this is such a different, it feels like an outlier from the rest of the album in a sense. Like, just most of the lyrics, like you've been talking about, have been vibes. This is the opposite of that. This is a well-told story that really could have fit onto any of Jack's solo projects or even some of his later White Stripe stuff. But regardless of where you put it, I'm putting it at number 1 on my list.
So, yeah, this song here. So, usually for tracks, I throw a whole bunch of notes here in terms of like points I want to hit on and like different moments I want to highlight, but I put nothing. I just put that Homelander quote from The Boys, and I'll read it to you. Oh, I got to tell you, it is perfect. Perfect. Everything down to the last minute details. Like, oh my god, okay, so I'm just gonna go off of a huge stream of consciousness here, because I just have thoughts and opinions about this song here. So, like, first of all, I love that you love this song. Whenever I was picking an album from the Raconteurs to do, it was this album, and it was because of this song I wanted in your earbuds ASAP. So yeah, just the way that this song hit me when I was first digging into the album, it shifted my brain in terms of just what music can do and what music can bring to the table. And this song here specifically, like one of the many, like there's a couple different things that attracts me to music. One is the ability to transport you into a story. This song does that to a T. I'm not going to read any bit of the lyrics because, like, I'm literally going to be reading a book at that rate. But the way that it's recorded with such precision and such care, and even at the end where, like, it's not clear how the story actually ends up, you get Jack singing like la 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 la. Like you can almost try to make the story end in the way that you want it to end while the la-las are going on. But dude, like the way that everything just comes together and the way that Jack delivers the vocals, and you can just, I would love to see a music video to this song here specifically because I think it would be absolutely amazing. And I'm sure there's a fan edit out there somewhere in the world. I mean, hell, we live in the year of our Lord 2024, at least for the next couple months. However, like just the way that the band grew, sets an excellent backdrop for the story. Like, I cannot say enough good things about this song. So if you listener are out there and you've not heard of Carolina Drama yet, do yourself a service. If you take anything out of this podcast here specifically, you need to listen to this song. You can thank me later.
It really is that great of a song, and it's probably like I would maybe even consider it like one of the best songs of Jack White's entire career, really. Like, I can't think of any song that's this lyrically deep or as introspective as this one. Because again, most of his stuff, is sort of mainstream rock vibes, but this is such a departure for him, and it pays off each and every time. It really is just a tour de force of a song.
I absolutely agree with you, man. Like, I would even elevate Carolina Drama to being one of the best songs of all time. Like, it's interesting that when a song can come into my orbit and it shifts my brain. Like, a lot of songs can't do that. Like, there's, like, like, even when I think that whole album shifted my brain whenever we did the Cure Disintegration episode. However, there's just, it's a very special moment whenever, like, that occurs, and I always mark it down as a pivotal moment within my musical taste and just my life as a whole. So yeah, I'm willing to plant my flag in the ground with saying that Carolina Drama, I'm getting so tongue tied right now because I'm just so excited, is one of the best songs of all time. Full stop.
Wow, that's a bold statement. And you know what else is a bold statement?
What else is a bold statement?
We did it.
We did it, man. We found out what it means to be consolers of the lonely.
Yes, we traveled back in time to 2008 when men were pretending it was 1808 and rocking out like it was 1978. So, yeah.
All right. So, I'm going to go first with my overall thoughts and ratings here. So, if you can't tell, I'm a huge Jack White fanboy. I mean, he's one of my favorite musicians and artists for a reason. Like, the way that he's able to incorporate different styles, whether it's garage rock, country, blues, big band kind of feel. Like, he does it very well within the context of this album here. Yes, there's a couple moments where, things don't land smoothly and maybe things could have been changed. But it's, within the context of this album, some songs are just, I would legitimately argue that, at least half of the songs are utterly perfect here. I have no notes about them. And, Carolina Drama, I literally just said, is one of the best songs ever. I can't say enough great things about this album. However, I will say, though, lyrics could have been a little bit different. Could have been a little bit more than just vibes. And also, you do have moments where the album kind of just has a slight thing that I'm like, maybe this was a little bit of a miss. So I'm not going to give this album a perfect 10 out of 10. However, I will give it a 9 out of 10.
I respect that. As I was thinking about this, it definitely parts of our discussion sort of influenced my thought. Because while, again, there are moments on this album like Carolina Drama, like You Don't Understand Me, like Many Shades of Black, and even some of the other tracks like These Stones Will Shout and Console the Lonely, where I was just like, these are great tracks just throughout the album. Like, even in the ones that we weren't talking about, or let me rephrase that, even in the tracks that I didn't like really a whole lot, like Rich Kid Blues, like Hold On, like 5 on the 5, there were still elements of it I could take away and be like, okay, I like that. And if they had switched things up, I could like it without having to, put any qualifiers on it. So that kind of elevated this album as a whole in my book. I'm not quite as high on it as you are, but I'm still going to give it a solid 8 out of 10 because I like the fact that Jack White and his band of merry men decided to try something different and at the same time try to make the old sound fresh and new, and I think for the most part they succeeded.
So that makes our collective score on Consolers of the Lonely by the Raconteurs a 8.5 out of 10 because Math works, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah, my next album recommendation for me, I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm not going to overthink it. Just, if you enjoyed Consolers of the Lonely, and this is your very first Raconteurs album, back it up one album to Broken Boys Soldiers by the same group. Has their most iconic song on there, Steady As She Goes. And there's a couple other cool tracks in there, and it's interesting to see what the band can bring to the table. Because it's a little bit of a sonic shift compared to, like, Consolers of the Lonely. So, yeah, my official recommendation is Broken Boys Soldiers by the Raconteurs.
I struggled a little bit to come up with a recommendation based on this album. But I'm going to go ahead and go with an album that we have reviewed almost about a year ago at this point. That's how long I've been doing this podcast now, is almost a year. It's one of the first ones we did, which was the 1969 release Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere by one Neil Young. Because much like this album, that album also sort of goes in a shape-shifting direction of mixing heavy garage rock type of crunch with a softer countryer side. So I think if you liked this album, Console the Lonely, I would recommend and point you to Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere.
Ladies and gentlemen, solid recommendations with me and Matt here. Check out that Neil Young or the other Raconteurs album if you haven't checked those out. And also if you haven't checked out, if you got to this one in the episode and you've not checked out Consolers of the Lonely, first of all, thank you, because obviously you enjoy what me and Matt bring to the table. But on the flip side of that, make sure you treat yourself to it, because we both have high to decent opinions about Consolers of the Lonely. We've both thoroughly enjoyed the album. So yeah. Anything else to say about this album as a whole before we pivot and shift into what we're going to be covering next week?
Not really. Again, I appreciate you recommending this to me. Again, I liked the sort of unexpected twists that I was not really expecting. That's what unexpected means. From the garage rocky sounds of Jack White to, again, a more open bouquet of variants brought by the Raconteurs.
So, Matt, that being said, now that we've covered Consolers of the Lonely and we've taken one step into the Jack White sphere, where are we going to go next? I know we're not going to go... Well, we might go back into the Jack White sphere, but I think we're gonna veer off into a different kind of sphere if I know how you work.
We are, and just to give you an idea of where my head was at thinking about what to go with next, we have, for the last 4 albums, 5 if you count the Mountain Goats, have dealt with rock albums whose covers have been some form of black and or white. The Mountain Goats was mostly, sort of a lo-fi rock album with, white cover. Then you have Peter Gabriel with a melting face in black and white. Then you have Kings of Leon in black and white. You have Metallica in black and white. And you have this album, which is, features a black and white photo cover. And while I do like all the albums that we've talked about to some extent, I feel we need to shift a bit more in a different direction. Sort of, deviate our palette a little bit. Now, ironically enough, the 2 albums that I am selecting both also have black backgrounds because I want to keep that theme going. But the sound of our next album, regardless of what you choose, will be significantly more pop-oriented. And the only 2 other details I will mention before I give you 2 choices is that I own both of these albums on vinyl, and that these albums are separated by 43 years. So, I'm going to give you 2 options. Helmet or Shells?
I'm going to go Shelves.
Shells, as in turtle shells. And that is the band we are going to be covering next. It is the Turtles, and their 1968 release entitled The Turtles Present the Battle of the Bands.
Okay. I'm really looking forward to this, man. Like, when you've presented like an album and an artist completely out of left field, like the clear example that I can think of is like whenever you introduced me to Jellyfish, like it was a great experience. So like I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you've not listened to that Turtles album, make sure you check it out before next week. It is the Turtles present the Battle of the Bands. By obviously the Turtles. So yeah, please check it out. Educate yourself as I'm going to be educating myself within that review, and Matt's going to be diving into that album a little bit further. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the review. I mean, I'm glad that you enjoyed the Raconteurs. I'm looking forward to talking about some Turtles next week. Yeah, so that basically concludes this episode of Hey, Listen to This. And yeah, if you are still listening to us, and if you have a episode recommendation, or if you want to share your thoughts, opinions about the episode and how you feel about the album, send us an email at ttheylisten@gmail.com. Drop us a comment on whatever you're listening to us on right now. Yeah, and I feel like that concludes this story of this review. So yeah, for the last time in this review about two men talking about what it means to be consolers of the lonely, I am the one, the only, the undisputed Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the not rich kid with possible blues, Matthew James Durzick.
Well, now you heard another side to this story here, man. But you want to know how it ends?
How does it end?
Well, I mean, if you must know the truth about the tale, you just go and ask the milkman.